through second year to sixth year. And I'm going to just give you the scaffolding and the bones, and I'd like you to add the flesh. So we're going to start. I think we were very fortunate to have some of the giants of South African medicine teach us. In particular, I think of Jannie Louw. We've heard Alice's talk, and we've heard mention of Stuart Saunders, and there are many. And so we're going to look at the people who interacted with us in second year, in third year, in fourth year, in fifth year, and in sixth year. And if you have any memories or any anecdotes, please share them this afternoon. It's fun, if it's humorous or any other way. So in January 1968, we entered through those imposing doors and we turned right and we went to the anatomy block and the physiology lecture theatre. Charlie's father-in-law was there to meet us, and then we sat down. This was day one of second year, and I can recognize at least four people. So I can see Rodney Resnick chatting to Johnny Ginsberg. You can see him there? So Rodney Resnick chatting to Johnny Ginsberg, Hilton Horsley, John Thing.
That's that little Scandinavian girl. What's her name? Blonde
hair? And there's Kathy Beatrice. Yeah. So where are you, Rosemary? Okay. Do you remember 55 years ago, Rosemary? There you were. Yeah, you could prove she was there. Okay, so something unusual. This was the first lecture we had, and the dean wasn't there. So the deputy dean, the locum dean, addressed us, and it said, Taylor Williams. And our esteemed class rep, who just looked after us for 6 years, was there. So James, tell us what Taylor Williams said, and it sort of, we almost put you off base at that day.
Can I talk from here?
Yeah, talk from there. We can hear you.
This chaos until Kate Villiers walked in with a black coat, a bow tie, and a monocle, which he took off.
Dave, I think you better go down there. You managed. Thank you. I mean, I was always terrified of Kate Villiers. He sort of had this sort of demonic look about him.
Well, he fixed us with his eagle eye, didn't say a word, just until there was complete silence. And then he said, "Do you know what you're here for?" Of course, there was no response. He said, "You are here going to spend the next 5 years of your lives imbibing knowledge so that you can do nothing for 98% of your patients and perhaps help 2% of them."
Whoa!
That was our introduction.
Thank you. Thanks, James. And then we went into the anatomy dissecting room. And I can, when I see that picture, I can smell the embalming fluid and the formalin. And I remember very well who our body was, or our cadaver. He was a very prominent philanthropic politician. His name was Thomas. I won't give you any more details. Does anybody, and we named our bodies. Can you remember Tony?
And he said, when we were trying to remember all these words and whatever, he said, if we could just put this to music, I'd be able to remember it. But so that was it. Jephthah. We actually had a tie made. I don't have it any longer. It had that cartoon of the heart running away from the transplant. There we are, Jephthah.
So these were the people who taught us anatomy, Professor Wells, and then the gorgeous Paula Wilson. I mean, she was absolutely beautiful. There was a story, she was a rag queen or rag princess when she was at varsity. And then, these were the demonstrators, and of course the Don and Freddie who produced the bodies. And Richard Hewlett is there, yes?
I remember Richard Hewlett giving us a lecture on neuroanatomy. Suddenly on flash, the medieval scene with a guy with a dog and a gun, and said, "I'm just putting this up to tell you that the hunting season is over."
Okay.
The grouse hunting season is what he said.
The grass hunting. Has anybody got any risque stories they want to tell about the, so one of the most unforgettable characters in second year was Don, and I always found him sort of larger than life, and he was a proclaimed author, and he wrote one of the books. In fact, he wrote two books, and if you were one of his favorites and he took a liking to you, he, in fact, would give you an autographed copy of the books. And this is one of the books that he autographed for me. He gave me on my birthday when we were in second year. And this is Richard Hewlett. You mentioned him. He wrote the preface to one of his books. And I quite liked it. He was sort of like Hagar, sort of in the Harry Potter. He was sort of large. And his giant figure dwindling silently down the corridor. And he used to say, "We're not promising," or "I'll ask Freddie," or "Oh, no, man, we're not pleased." I don't know if you remember that. He was actually quite a character. And I liked one of his stories, which I've just taken from his book. And it goes about the two elderly ladies having tea at a nudist colony. And Florrie inquires, "How are you, Mavis?" "Not so well, Florrie. For the past couple of months, whenever I drink tea, I get the most awful heartburn." Florrie says, "I'm not surprised, Mavis. It's not heartburn. Your left nipple is in your teacup." But to be on, to be serious for a moment, other things happened in 1968, and I'm reminded of Dickens. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. So the best of times, Barnard did his second transplant, and this unique picture never happened before. Barnard showing Bleiberg his heart. So that was the heart he removed, and he's explaining to Philip Bleiberg, "This is what your heart looked like." No, it's never happened in the history of medicine. The best of times. The worst of times, many of us went to the airport on the 28th of March 1968. There were 1,000 UCT students waving goodbye to Bill Offenberg. And it was an enormous pity, travesty. He was a brilliant man, and we were the losers. He eventually became president of the Royal College of Surgeons. He was knighted by the Queen. He had a stellar career in the UK, but he was banned by the government for being a political activist, and he had to leave. Then we got to third year, and Thompson, so he had these big bushy eyebrows, and he used to growl. He said, "Don't you believe it?" You remember him talking like that? And especially, he used to talk about pulmonary tuberculosis, and he didn't like what Helen Brown was teaching in the wards. "Don't you believe it?" he used to say. And then we had to peer down a microscope, looking at these little plump pink and purple cells and looking for mitoses. Steve, you want to make a comment about looking down a microscope?
Well, I have to say that those funny little microscope, I was fascinated by it. And when I look back, wonder what I'd do.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I thought of. I thought I'd like to do that. So
Really?
I was 0.001% who enjoyed looking down and knocking at microscopes. And infants, we used to study.
Great. So obviously the seed dropped there. Great. And then I'm just going to skip along 969. Norman.
Can I just say something quickly about Prof. Thompson? He was right in this room. He came through the door and he looked at us all. It was amazing how he didn't look very big at the time. He was much smaller now. But that thick brogue of his, he said, today we're going to talk about infarction of the heart. That comes from the Latin, what? Yo! Which translates into get stuffed.
Prof. Slow.
Yeah.
Really had a real Scottish accent.
Yeah.
There's one thing which always stuck in my brain when he said he's talking about depressurization in aircraft.
Yeah.
Like in his Scottish accent. And you know, he said, I can't do Scots, but it's sort of like if you know there's a hole in the aircraft and depressurize it, you can ignore the social convention and bump and pop out as much as you like.
Sounds even better in Scottish, yeah. Yeah. Steve, can you do your Scottish impression?
He said, if there's a sudden depressurization, he's very Scottish. He said, you can ignore the social convention and bump and pop as much as you like.
And so I love this picture because remember the pharmacology exams. So let's look. Dave Thompson. You remember? Dixie. Dennis Hosking. Johnny May. Going to the pharmacology exam. And even, you know, Supika got into the spirit of the thing. I don't know when the scuba outfit occurred, and it obviously wasn't this exam. I mean, Dixie was actually quite respectable in this picture. Maybe it was another one. And then I just want to have a look. So this was Smuts Rugby. Just showing that, you know, we had fun as well. And so Mickey Watson, Hannes Botha, Rhino Renders. Look at that clean-cut guy there, sort of. Pinky Clarkson, Dixie, Alistair MacDonald. So what happened there, Pete, sort of in this game? What's the story about you scoring the winning try against Belson? Okay, you're just dozing off there. You scored the winning try in the game against Belson. The Maul. Too modest. And then, what about the Smuts formal over there? Who do we recognize? Mickey? Very smooth. I wonder if he married her. Sort of, I don't know. Anybody know? Didn't marry her. Okay. Pinky? Dixie? Charlie? You recognize Steve Hillock? Yeah. Who? Dave Thompson. Hey. Who's that, Dave? Brilliant. Okay, and then we went to fourth year. Who do we recognize here? Chris Marispini, Lee Johansen, Celia. There's Rosemary. And Rosemary, who's that? Who? Janet Hiley and? Margret Retief, yeah. She died about, 2 years ago, didn't she? Yeah. Okay. So there we were getting those white coats with the fresh green stripes. And then, we had Kench and Kempath. And I still don't understand the Krebs cycle. You know, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
I remember something which Kench preached.
Yeah.
20 years before he was. Remember in the diets that said we mustn't have about 5 eggs a week in cholesterol go up.
Yeah.
To the sky. I remember him saying, it's absolutely not the cholesterol you eat, it's the other stuff which makes the cholesterol. So you can have as many eggs as you like. I remember he told us that in 1971.
Yeah.
I reckon he was about 10 years ahead of the US recommended.
Yeah. Well, that's what Joe said, yeah. And then we went to psychiatry, and those were the people that influenced it. Lynn Gillis and neuroses and psychoses. And you remember, he stood at this very podium, and he lectured, and he took off his glasses, and he used to spin them. He used to twiddle them. I don't know if you remember. And it was completely distracting. He used to watch him twiddling his glasses, and sometimes he dropped them. Irv, do you want to make a comment about Lynn?
Yeah, I have a very close relationship with Lynn. And one afternoon when he was 96, he wanted me to take him to the Kentridge direction. And he wanted to bring a 96-year-old friend. So I took them both, and we got lost.
So the Kentridge exhibition was at the Dakar.
I've never seen Lynn so excited. He explained everything about the Kentridge.
I mean, he was shocked when he died 2 years ago.
He died in 96.
Yeah.
But Jake, he did something else. The way he was sartorially, very proper.
Very elegant, yeah.
But he used to have his glasses here. And he used to be lecturing. And when it came to the final point, it dropped.
Great. And then we got into medicine. And I think we really had superb physicians teaching us, and I've listed them there. And Joe, I disagree with you. I remember the very first lecture that Stuart Saunders gave us on myocardial infarction. What did he say? And I know exactly what he said. He said you just need 3 drugs: lignocaine, atropine, morphine. I just remember that. He was absolutely clear. That was 1970. It probably hasn't changed much, other than you give aspirin as well.
I remember something which Stuart Saunders said in a very, very early lecture. I think it was a sort of a general rah-rah before we started. And this is something which sticks in my mind. I remember him saying to us, staring at the class, saying, it's not that you die, it's how you live with your disease.
Okay.
I remember sort of thinking,
Yeah, wise. Okay, so this was extraordinary. So our TUT group arrived on the first day, and we were in the Eels doing medicine, and we were going to examine plant patients, and we were very anxious. We never interacted with patients before. We arrived up on the F floor and got out the lift, and there was this little guy wearing a white coat. And I don't know if you remember, but in those days there were lift attendants. You remember? They used to sit on a little stool. And we thought he was the lift attendant. He was sort of milling around. And he came over to us and he said, "Are you the New Zealanders?" And we said, "Yeah." He said, "Have you seen the jaundice patient in the corner?" "No," he said, "Come with me." And it was Frankie Foreman. And he just lashed onto us. He must have been about 85, and we were just in the right place at the right time, and he gave us an hour tutorial on the jaundice patient. I mean, he was really extraordinary. So that was our one and only interaction with...
you had an interaction with his wife,
yeah, we did pathology, yeah.
She used to give us, until she started doing postmortems, I didn't understand what they were about, but she did the most fantastic joining of clinical information into pathology. I remember for the 3/4 of pathology, I don't know what a bloody PM was, but she would teach, and somehow she brought the clinical in.
Great,
I'll one other story about her, because she was Frankie Foreman's wife. And my dad, although he was a professor of law, started Shawco with Golda Seltzer.
Okay,
He on the legal side, because he was on the hospital board, and she on the medical side. So the two of them together started.
Lovely story, thank you. So I don't know if you remember these E-floor clinical demonstrations in medicine. They used to wheel a patient in, and they would, somebody to come and examine the station. And there were always two people sitting right there, Johan Hahn and Trevor Evans. I reckon you remember that. And
With blood on his head.
they wheeled this old man in, propped up on a chair, short of breath, and Stuart Saunders said, we'd like to come and examine him. And fortunately, we were always at the back, so we just kept that. Jeff Pascal puts up his hand, comes down, examines the patient, gets out the stethoscope, spends several minutes listening. Saunders said, what do you think? He said, well, I find that the apex is displaced, parasternal heave, there's an opening snap, there's a gallop, and I think it's grade 3 mitral incompetence. This is on the first day of medicine. I sort of thought, geez, what planet is this guy from? I didn't even know how to plug in a stethoscope. So I said to Jeff at tea time, Jeff, Jesus, why did you do that? He said, well, I read Velma Schiller's cardiology during holidays, cover to cover. So Jeff was a different planet. I mean, no wonder he got a Rhodes Scholarship. Wow, it was really extraordinary.
Jake, who's that?
This is not from our class. That's Frankie Foreman. This is just from the class of 1960. I just wanted an example. And then I always loved the tutorials in neurology with Frances Ames. So she smoked incessantly. She always had a fag in the corner of her mouth. And it never moved. And the ash got longer and longer. We all sat there. She lived at bedside, always behind the desk. She never used the ashtray. And we focused on this ash, you know. And all she wanted to talk was about cannabis, marijuana. That's all she actually was interested in. We all looked at this ash. She could talk with a cigarette in her mouth. And eventually the ash fell down and she just knocked it away. Extraordinary. Yeah. And then I won't go on too much about surgery because we heard about Yanni. But
We just backtrack for a minute and remind EJ, word about Peter
Peter
Jacobs.
Jacobs.
Is the time running out for you? Peter Jacobs.
If you don't mind, we can.
We were either for him or against him. He was a very controversial man. But I, unfortunately, was drawn as his registrar when he did the first bone marrow transplant.
Yeah.
On a young girl from August.
Okay, interesting.
And,
But I mean, I loved him. He used to do a ward round, mackerel white coat and a bow tie. And a dictaphone. So he just walked around with a dictaphone dictating the notes. It was extraordinary.
A story about him. He used to be an all-American doctor from Stanford.
Correct.
He used to wear his collars up.
Exactly.
He had old-fashioned kind of stethoscope. You know, the ones where it became one thing, the other ones where it still had lots of tubes. He definitely had one of those.
Yeah.
I remember this was at the start. He used to have a massive ward round and everybody could go by, including the cleaners and everything. There's this one slightly schizophrenic student apparently walked up to him on his ward rounds, grabbed hold of his collars and pulled them down in front of him. And he didn't bat an eyelid. He just pushed them up again and carried on his own.
Then we did obstetrics and gynae, and they've got to be carried.
just to make the point of what a pioneer he was ruthless about data. That came before anything else.
Yeah.
I was locked into the room with this girl after she had total body radiation, etc., and had a married feeling, etc. I had to wash her, feed her, I was cut off from the outside world. He would come and speak saw him hesitate. By the way, never use this. But he was the consummate showman in our undergraduate curriculum. PJ was the show.
And do you remember he had an assistant, a lovely senior assistant called Lucille? Do you remember? Beautiful.
She was a very close assistant.
Okay, so listen, we need to move on because I'm sure Andy has got a good story. I'm sure Pete's got a good story for us when we get obsessed in dying.
Can I just speak about Ben Stanley?
Yeah.
Because my first ever interaction with him was in my first year,
Yeah.
when he was sent as the junior professor to come and speak to the first years about how we should behave on the main campus. This is now 1966. Free love, hippies, long hair, floral shirts. And he explained to us that he would wear a tie every day for the entire year up there. Well, that wasn't going to happen. My last interaction with him was 1 week ago, when at the age of 97, he attended the South African Society conference. And we were reminded that in the last 7 years, he published at least 8 papers, 90 plus. His brain is sharp, his body is
Fantastic. Andy, you got a comment?
Want me to tell a story?
Yeah.
Can I come down here?
Yeah.
It's quite graphic. I'm actually quite appalled that only 9 of our class actually did obstetrics and gynae. It's the most magnificent speciality of all of them. And unfortunately, you can see from this number, there's only one serious academic contender. The rest are part-timers, or was self-serving private guys at all. And there's a couple of names missing from there, like Mickey Katz, who was a delightful fellow. Anyway, my story was that one of these guys dropped me in the lurch. I arrived back from England, and I was quite tired, and the first night he phoned me at 8 o'clock, and he said, Andy, I've got a case that's at Chipley. I'm not feeling well, I'm feeling pretty sick. Will you take it over? I said, with pleasure, I'll help you out. So I arrived at Chipley, and there was a lady in early labour. She must have been 350 pounds. No word of a lie, I could put my fist into her belly button. She overflowed the bed, and her labia were about 6 inches wide. And so I said, my God, what? You couldn't even ascertain how big this child was. So I sat down for the night, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And about 6 o'clock in the morning, the head appeared. Good, up in the lithotomy, sitting down there, a whole lot, out comes this head, and poof, it goes like this back, and won't rotate, and you know for hell, you now got deep shoulder transverse arrest. And I don't know what speciality you guys get, but this is really a nightmare of a thing. So you're sitting there, and you've got your greens on it all, and the book tells you, put your fingers in, and this leg for quite a few inches, trying to get through the baby's head, and you've got to try and feel for the cubital fossa, hit the cubital fossa, and the arm will present itself, and you can grab the arm, pull it out, and collapse the shoulders. And the clock is ticking, and you can feel the sweat start to run down your body. And it's nobody else is around at all, only you. And so this little bloody bugger had his arms behind his back. So the next thing the book says, now you've got to feel along for the clavicle. Feel along, and you break it. But the fact is, it's not bad for the baby. It heals very quickly. But you've got to break it forward. So the spicules of the bone don't puncture the subclavian. So it exsanguinates before it gets out. But the time is going, and you're getting wet. And the clock is ticking, and the people start to gather behind you. And the face is looking at you like this, is going blacker and blacker all the time. So the fact is, oh shit, I can't even feel where the end of the clavicle, BOOM! You break it, and poof, the shoulders collapse, and out it comes, and you give it to the pediatrician, and it weighs just short of about 5 kilos. You hold this baby, and you sit down in front of these legs, and you cut yourself in a episiotomy, and that's the last thing I remember. I just fell straight into the vagina. Like this. Sheer relief. And all the chaps said, Dr. Sherwood's dead, he's dead. And I wake up on the floor and the registrar's there trying to put a drip up in the vagina. And for a couple of months after that in my obstetric career, they used to put pillows behind me when I was delivering. So I remember that day one of my obstetric career, and I've loved it ever since, and I've been privileged to have.
Great. Tony?
When we were at Little Maternity Home doing our obstetrics, and I vividly remember a ward round postnatal in the morning with Archie Michael. And there was a lady who had delivered a baby with bright red hair. And he stood at the end of the bed and he said, "So how are you, Mummy? And tell me, what colour was the father's hair?" She says, "I don't know, Doctor. He never took his hat off."
Look, we could go on for a long time. We've only got to fourth here, but I think I must stop at this point. And if there's time later, we can continue. But I think we need to ask Dave to do his talk now. Great. Thank you. We can continue later.
That's another your talks today. I'm just going to talk about a personal journey of my own.